This is the story of a man named John Jones, who ventured into a cave near Utah Lake with the intent of exploring. During his exploration, he decided to set a new record by venturing into the narrowest section of the cave. Little did he know that this decision would turn out to be the last one of his life. As he navigated through the tight passages of the cave known as Nutty Putty, he accidentally entered a section that no one had ever reached before. It was a space so narrow that not only was it impossible to move his hands, but even breathing became difficult. Tragically, John got stuck upside down in this coffin-like space. This is the story of 26-year-old John Jones, whose final 27 hours of life were spent trapped in this cave. Welcome once again to another video from the Untold Mysteries. Ladies and gentlemen, near Utah's Salt Lake City lies a series of small rock formations, within which is the Nutty Putty Cave, a hydrothermal cave. This cave was first discovered in 1960 by a man named Dale Green. Since then, thousands of adventurous young individuals have visited this cave to test their skills. Nutty Putty Cave is well known for its narrow, slippery, and winding passages. The cave has only one entry point, which is just 30 inches wide. This means only those with a chest and waist measurement under 30 inches can enter. Each year, nearly 20,000 people visited the cave to hone their abilities. However, between 1999 and 2004, a series of accidents occurred, leading to growing concerns about the cave's safety. At one point, a 23-year-old young man was stuck deep inside the cave for 7 hours, and on another occasion, a young man was trapped upside down in the cave for an entire night. Due to such incidents, authorities decided to shut down the Nutty Putty Cave in 2006. However, professional cavers argued that the cave should only be closed to inexperienced individuals, as they were often the ones getting stuck. On the other hand, officials argued that Nutty Putty Cave was like a ticking time bomb, capable of taking lives at any given moment. The debate between professional cavers and officials continued until, eventually in 2007, the cave was reopened with new regulations. A management committee was established to oversee access to the cave, allowing entry only to those with significant caving experience and proper professional equipment. To enter Nutty Putty Cave, one had to apply for a permit at least 21 days in advance. Following this process, two brothers from Salt Lake City, John and Josh Jones, also applied for a permit. On the evening of November 24, 2009, at 8 p.m., 26-year-old John Jones entered the Nutty Putty Cave system with his group. Although both brothers had some prior caving experience, it was their first time in Nutty Putty. For the first hour inside the cave, everything seemed normal as they explored the largest cavity, known as the Big Slide. It was at this point that John, Josh, and two other friends decided to take the risk of venturing deeper into the cave, towards its most challenging section known as the birth canal. The birth canal is not only extremely narrow, but also notoriously difficult to locate, and very few have dared to approach it. In the past, several people had gotten stuck on the way to the birth canal. However, John, his brother, and their two friends were in good physical shape, which gave them the confidence to proceed toward the birth canal, while the rest of the team stayed behind. The idea to reach the birth canal was originally John's, which is why he was leading the group. The path was so narrow that John had to crawl on his stomach. He believed he was entering the birth canal, but unknowingly took a wrong turn and ended up in a passage called the corkscrew. This section was so tight that only the slimmest and most experienced cavers could navigate through it. Looking at the cave map, John was supposed to take a right turn toward the birth canal, but instead, he took a left turn by mistake. As he moved forward, the passage became increasingly narrow, making it impossible for him to turn back. However, he continued crawling, hoping that the path would widen ahead and provide him a chance to turn around. Soon, he saw a downward slope and thought it might be the point where he could finally pivot and return. Unfortunately, things took a disastrous turn here. As he entered the extremely tight space measuring just 10 by 18 inches, he discovered it was a dead end. Now, John was stuck upside down in a space no bigger than a washing machine. His head was lower than his feet, and the passage was so narrow that his arms were pinned against his body, rendering him unable to use them. It was a dire situation. John made multiple attempts to free himself, but failed every time. Realizing he was stuck, he began calling out to his brother Josh for help. A few minutes later, Josh arrived at the scene, only to see John's leg sticking out of the narrow passage. Initially, Josh joked about his brother's predicament, but as he grasped the seriousness of the situation, panic set in. Josh grabbed John's legs and tried pulling him out several times, but this only made matters worse as John became lodged even deeper into the narrow space. Completely immobilized and upside down, John was unable to move his body at all. At this point, both brothers realized they needed professional help. The problem was that there was no mobile signal deep inside the cave to call. Josh had no choice but to exit the cave to make the emergency call. After alerting the authorities, he quickly returned to John's location, anxiously awaiting help. About 3 hours later, the first rescue team arrived at the scene. This included Susie Motola, who spent 2 hours trying to free John. However, John was far more tightly trapped than anyone had anticipated. The space was so constricted that Susie even cut John's jeans to gain an extra centimeter of room, but this effort also failed. Eventually, exhausted and unable to make further progress, Susie had to exit the cave. By this time, John's wife, his young daughter, and a team of 30 rescuers had gathered outside the cave. The rescue team brainstormed various ways to take out John, including a drastic and horrifying option of amputating his legs. However, they ultimately agreed to use a system of ropes and pulleys to pull him out. The plan required attaching the ropes to John's legs and carefully pulling him free. The challenge was securely drilling pulleys into the cave's rocks in a way that would prevent the ropes from rubbing against the rough surfaces, which could weaken them. There was also a risk that the brittle rocks in the cave might break under pressure, potentially collapsing the passage and blocking John entirely. Despite the risks, the pulley system was the only viable option at the time. During the drilling process, some rocks broke loose and slid onto John, worsening the situation. Performing such delicate work 700 feet deep inside the cave was not only extremely challenging, but also incredibly time-consuming. To make matters worse, the narrow passages allowed only one rescuer to work near John at a time. Meanwhile, the number of rescuers outside the cave had swelled to over 100, but their hands were tied due to the limited space and complexity of the situation. Adding to the tension, a doctor on the rescue team made the situation even worse by explaining the severe risks John faced due to being trapped upside down. The doctor estimated that John had only about 10 hours left before his organs would start failing. The human body is designed to function upright, with the heart positioned to pump blood efficiently throughout the body. Under normal circumstances, about 80% of blood is naturally supplied to the lower body with the help of gravity. However, since John was upside down, his heart had to work much harder to pump blood upward to 80% of his body. This overexertion was putting immense strain on his heart, significantly increasing the risk of a heart attack. Realizing the urgency, the rescue workers intensified their efforts to at least reposition John into an upright position to reduce the strain on his heart. After hours of waiting, the pulleys were finally installed, and John was pulled by his legs. However, they soon encountered new problems. John's legs were positioned in such a way that they couldn't bend properly. As the rescuers tried to pull him, his feet kept hitting the ceiling of the cave. Despite these challenges, they managed to pull John out of the narrow crevice to a certain extent. But at the final stage, one of the pulleys came loose from the cave wall, and John got stuck once again in the same position he was in before. By this point, John was becoming increasingly exhausted. To help him relax, a two-way communication system was sent inside the cave, allowing him to speak with his wife. This provided some emotional comfort, and John felt somewhat better. Finally, after 19 hours, preparations were completed to attempt pulling John out once again. This time, the operation had to be done very carefully, as every movement put significant pressure on John's trapped body, especially his legs. After immense difficulty, they managed to pull John out a significant distance. At this point, his face was visible to the rescue worker, who later described seeing John's eyes red and a faint smile on his face. For the first time in nearly 19 hours, John was able to see the outside world from the narrow passage where he had been trapped. They were only a few moments away from completely pulling him out of the cave when suddenly one of the pulleys failed again. John was thrown back into the same tight spot where he had been stuck for nearly 20 hours. In the final attempt to rescue him, rescuers tried to drill and break the surrounding rocks, but it seemed too late. John had stopped moving and was no longer responding. His wife tried to revive him over the radio, but there was no response. At this point, a brave paramedic was sent down to take John's pulse, and the feared outcome was confirmed. John Jones was declared dead at 11:50 p.m. on November 25, 2009. John's wife couldn't believe the news that her husband had died due to such a small mistake. She held onto the hope that perhaps his pulse hadn't been properly checked from his leg, and that he might still be alive. However, the truth was undeniable, and the reality hit hard. Even though doctors had predicted he would survive only for 10 hours due to his position, John had defied the odds, staying alive for an additional 17 hours thanks to his good health. Various plans were made to retrieve his body, including the idea of removing it in 2 parts. In the end, however, it was decided that John's body would remain where it was, and the entire Nutty Putty cave would be sealed off permanently. His grave was declared within the cave. Today, John Jones's body still lies inside the Nutty Putty cave in the same position, serving as a reminder of the dangers of cave exploration. A plaque has been placed outside the cave in his memory. It is hoped that this video from the Untold Mysteries will inspire you to like and share it. Thank you for your heartfelt comments, and we'll see you in the next amazing video.